Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football. And today we have to talk about the upcoming 2022 college football season, week 0, the top 5 most anticipated games. And we're going to break down who I think is going to make the college football playoffs. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking about in the comments below. What are you guys most excited for the college football 2022 season? College football is back. All right, college football is back, and we got to dive into it. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and let's start off with talking about these week 0 games. August 27th, Saturday, we got football, baby, and I am pumped. It has been a long off season, and I am just excited to be able to have college football back on Saturday mornings. And these might not be the most eye-grabbing games, but come on, we got to be thankful for it. And probably the most entertaining game that we're going to have on Saturday is Nebraska and Northwestern playing in Dublin, Ireland. Dublin, Ireland? I hope I said that right. And this is going to be awesome because Nebraska is getting the spotlight in a season where a lot of people have crowned them the best 3-win team, including myself, right? I thought they were extremely good last year. It didn't seem like they could win in the late game situations against a lot of those teams. Nebraska was certainly a team last year that could have went bowling if they could have figured out how to win late in those games. And I think finally moving on from Adrian Martinez and bringing in Casey Thompson, this is going to be great for the Nebraska fan base, but it's also going to be great for Scott Frost. Remember, Scott Frost used to be an incredible offensive coordinator, helped Chip Kelly in those offenses. He helped to get a Heisman candidate and a Heisman winner in Marcus Mariota. And I think that's what a lot of Nebraska fans were expecting when Scott Frost came to Nebraska. They expected to see a high-powered offense, and that's not something necessarily that we've seen consistently out of Nebraska. We've seen it at times. We've seen glimpses of it, but it's not something that we've seen consistently. And I think this year we're going to see a completely different Nebraska team. Now, does that say they're going to go win a ton of games? They might not go 9 or 10 wins this year, but let's just say they win 6 or 7 games. At least they go bowling, but they have a lot of games like they did last year when they played Fordham, whatever that FCS team was, where they put up 52 points, or Northwestern, where they put up 56 points last year, right? Let's say they average 40 points a game. I think Scott Frost's job at that point is a little bit more secure because you went to a bowl game, you've improved, your offense is where you expect it to be. And so I definitely think Nebraska has an opportunity this year to just make leaps and bounds of where everybody expected him to be. And Scott Frost has an opportunity to secure his job without having to go just have a spectacular, magical season. And so we talked a little bit about it, right? Last year, Nebraska beat Northwestern 56-7. I mean, completely skull-drugged them through the mud. I don't expect it to be as big as a blowout this year because Northwestern primarily usually has a good defense. And last year, it was a lot of young talent on that defense. And even though they lost a guy like Brandon Joseph to Notre Dame, I would still expect Pat Fitzgerald and that crew up at Northwestern to put up a team that can at least be competitive on defense and apply that pressure. However, I still think Nebraska should be able to go in there and win this game handily. However, it's probably going to be a little bit closer in the first half than maybe the Nebraska fans want it. So currently, Nebraska is favored by 11.5 points. I am going to go ahead and take the over on that. I think Nebraska wins this game by 21 or more. I am extremely excited to have this game as a week 0 game. I think it's going to be great for Nebraska. All eyes are on them. they have an opportunity to show out this year with their new quarterback on the prime stage with really not a lot of other games. I mean, let's look at some of the other games that we have on the schedule. You have Florida State playing, but they're playing an FCS team. So realistically, they're going to win that game, but it's only on the ACC network. Then you have North Carolina playing Florida A&M. Again, they should win that game. I mean, I think the next most intriguing game on Saturday is Vanderbilt and Hawaii. But that's a 9:30 game, 9:30 p.m. So at 11:30, you really don't have any other games that are going to be competitive to Nebraska and Northwestern. The eyes are on them. Nebraska gets the opportunity to show off. Now, let's talk a little bit about this Florida State game because I'm interested to see what we're going to see out of Florida State, especially with how Florida State has been over the past couple of years. It's weird because Florida State, they can go out there and they can get good recruits early, but kind of lose them later in the recruiting class. They have the ability to go out there and be a great team year in, year out. But like last year, they started out 0-4, and quite frankly, I thought an inexcusable just start to the season. Like, you played Notre Dame really tough. You lost by 3 points in overtime. But you lost to Jacksonville State. And then you lost to Wake Forest and Louisville. And then you kind of picked it up a little bit, winning 3 straight games against Syracuse, North Carolina, UMass. Lost to Clemson, lost to NC State, but you beat Miami, you beat Boston College, and then you lost to Florida by 3, ending the season at 5-7. And the previous year, you went 3-6. Now, I get that that was a COVID year. And in 2019, you guys were bowl eligible at 6 games. But Florida State fans expect a little bit more than that. And so their schedule's not super favorable this year. But I am intrigued to see what is Florida State realistically going to put out on the field. What does that offense look like with quarterback? I would assume AJ Duffy is going to be the starter. You have other guys on the team like Dylan McInerney, I think is how you say it, Geno English, and you have Jordan Travis along with Tate Rodemaker. But I think AJ Duffy's probably your most talented quarterback in that room. So again, I'm going to be watching this game just from the standpoint of what are they going to put out on the field? Because are they going to be able to go week 2 and be competitive with LSU? I don't necessarily need to see them beat LSU. I just want to see them be competitive enough to go out there and play with a team like LSU. I don't want to see them get blown out in that game. If they can go out there and just be competitive, maybe lose by 7, 14, 10 points, I think you're going on the right track because I think LSU is going to be a pretty good team this year. All right, so lastly, the last game I'm really going to be watching on this slate is North Carolina. So this one's intriguing because last year they kind of didn't live up to the expectations that people necessarily had on them, right? They went 6-7. They lost to South Carolina in the Mayo Bowl. You know, I think a lot of people had a lot more expectations for this team with Mac Brown being the head coach. I am interested to see what we're going to get out of Drake May, who, by the way, is a freshman. So what intrigues me the most about this North Carolina team is their quarterback room is extremely young. And you're starting a freshman at quarterback. Now, your eldest players in that room are sophomores. So I'm curious to see what we're going to get out of the recently named starting quarterback, Drake May. And this intrigues me because you're getting a quarterback room that is extremely young, full of freshmen and full of sophomores. But you're getting a North Carolina team that in 2022 had the number 11 ranked class, coming in with 2 5-stars, and Zach Rice, a 5-star offensive tackle, and Travis Shaw, a 5-star defensive lineman. It's going to be very intriguing to see what North Carolina is going to put on the field, because they're putting up the recruiting classes to show us that they can compete at a high level in the ACC, but we necessarily haven't seen it on the field. In 2022, Drake May was a 4-star quarterback, a top 100 player. He was ranked number 56 overall. So what are we going to get out of Drake May? I guess that's the question. And I know they're not playing great competition. They're playing Florida A&M. But again, I think we're going to be able to see enough to know, okay, like, is Drake May going to be the dude? Because next week, the week after that, they have to go play what I would consider not an easy game. You have to go to Appalachian State. Appalachian State has been a pretty good team over the past couple of years. Like, they're consistently a good team. And then you play Georgia State, and then you have to go into your gauntlet of Notre Dame at home, Virginia Tech at home, at Miami, at Duke, Pittsburgh, at Virginia, at Wake Forest. Then you end the season with Georgia Tech and NC State at home. What are the Tar Heels going to be? We're going to find out in the first 3 weeks with Drake May. All right. So let's go ahead and let's jump into what I think are the most anticipated games of 2022. And we're going to start off at number 5, Utah versus USC. Okay, so this game intrigues me because obviously it's Lincoln Riley's first year at USC with Caleb Williams. They were able to take decent recruits in Raleek Brown from OU, but then you also brought in guys like Latrell McCutcheon. You brought in Brendan Rice from Colorado. You've got one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver, in Jordan Addison from Pittsburgh. And then you also have one of the most highly recruited wide receivers in Mario Williams there as well. So we know that USC should be able to put out a competent offense. Now, how good that offense is going to rely on that offensive line and what that offensive line is going to be. Remember, Lincoln Riley does not have Bill Bedenbaugh developing his offensive line this year at USC. Bill Bedenbaugh's still at OU. And so I think depending on what USC can put out there at an offensive line perspective, that's going to depend on what kind of season they have. And with Utah, in my opinion, being the favorite to come out of the Pac-12, potentially with only one loss, maybe an undefeated Utah, because let's be honest, the Pac-12 is an easy run of the mill. Like, you should be able to run through the Pac-12 and not have an issue. That game's going to intrigue me because USC up to that point, I feel like has a pretty easy schedule. You start the season off with Rice at home. Then you have to go to Stanford, who's not going to be, I think, very good. You have to play Fresno State. They could be sneaky, but you should be able to beat them. You should be able to beat Oregon State. Arizona State could be in a complete disarray collapse, even though they have Emory Jones at quarterback. I believe at some point or another, if Arizona State is struggling, Herm Edwards is out. Then you have Washington State at home. I mean, there's a good chance that USC is 6-0 at this point and is a top 10 team. Utah is 6-0 at this point, a top 10 team. This is going to be a very intriguing matchup because I think this is going to decide, I think, who is going to win the Pac-12. By this point, we should know what we're going to get from USC in terms of just an overall production standpoint on the field. And I'm curious because Utah was really good last year. And there's a lot of drama surrounding USC. So I'm excited for this game. It's USC's first real test. You can't tell me that game day will not be in Utah for that game. They're going to take that opportunity. It's going to be a great game. I'm not going to give any predictions on these games until the week of the game, but let me tell you, it's definitely one of my most anticipated games. If you guys can see the excitement out of me for this game, imagine what it's going to be like for these other four. Okay, Notre Dame and Clemson. Okay, I'm excited for this game because right now Clemson is ranked number 4 in the country, and there is this question around quarterback for Clemson because DJ Uyunglele, who was a highly recruited guy out of college or out of high school into college, ended up going to Clemson, had a pretty good season, had a pretty good couple games when Trevor Lawrence was out, right? Against Notre Dame. Actually, one of those games was against Notre Dame. There were a lot of expectations going in for him last year. Didn't have a great season. A lot of people are down on him. Guys, I think DJ is going to ball out this year. I think he's going to ball out this year. And I think Clemson is back this year. I think they're going to have great offensive production. But that's not all I want to talk about because you got to go to Notre Dame. Clemson's got to go to Notre Dame to play this game. To Notre Dame. In Marcus Freeman's first year, where you know Marcus Freeman is going to put up a stellar defense, right? We know that's going to happen. This Notre Dame stadium is going to have 81,000 people in that stadium, maybe 1,000 more, maybe 82. It's going to be popping for that game. And it's going to be exciting. I'm very intrigued to see what we're going to get out of these two teams this season. And we'll talk about Clemson a little bit later on. But for Notre Dame, because their schedule this year is extremely tough. You have to start the season out at Ohio State, number 2 Ohio State. You got to play BYU at home. You have to go to North Carolina. Then you play Clemson, and then you end the season in LA playing Lincoln Riley and probably one of the most anticipated teams in college football this year. Like, there's a chance that Notre Dame could come out of this thing with one loss and be in contention to go to the college football playoffs this year. I'm sorry. This game, I think this year is going to be a highly underrated game, especially early in the season, because again, I think a lot of people are down on DJ. Actually, we know a lot of people are down on DJ. And so I don't think that this game is getting the hype that it should be. And I have this game at number 4, and it is being played on November 5th. So here is the thing. With it being played November 5th, being later in the season, we're going to get probably the best of these two teams playing each other. It's not going to be like Notre Dame playing Ohio State early in the season, where Ohio State's going to have Jim Knowles as their first game as a defensive coordinator. Yeah, we know what we're going to get from Ohio State on offense, but again, when it's the team's first game, it's kind of, those games are usually toss-ups. Like, I can usually tell you unless it's just like Alabama versus Utah State, you can usually tell you, like, if it's two teams like that, like Ohio State and Notre Dame, those games are usually a toss-up the first game because you don't know what you're going to get from a production standpoint from that team. You haven't seen them play that season. Later in the season, when Clemson and Notre Dame are going to play each other, those teams should be pretty well on a roll. We should know what we're going to get from them. So I'm really excited to see what we're going to get from DJ. I'm really excited to see what Marcus Freeman's going to put on the field. I think that game has a potential to have two undefeated teams late in the season playing each other, potentially to knock one of each other out of the college football playoff berth. All right, at number 3 on this list, I have Texas and Alabama. You can't tell me you are not excited to see this game. You can't tell me you are not excited to see Sark go up against Nick Saban in that Alabama defense. Texas got one first place vote in the coaches poll. There's a part of me that wants to believe Nick Saban voted for Texas. I know it probably didn't happen, but there's a part of me that wants to think Nick Saban voted for Texas to give a little bit of a fire going into that Alabama-Texas game. there is a lot of hype around this Texas team, especially for next year, where they currently have the number 2 class. So not only do we have Texas and Alabama going at it head-to-head on the field, they're going head-to-head in the recruit. Against these recruits in the recruiting rankings. They're going head-to-head with each other right now. Alabama's number 1. Texas is number 2. Texas got Arch Manning. Like, there is a lot of hype around this Texas team. Got the number 1, I think, what was it? Wide receiver, number 1 running back, number 1 quarterback. Texas fans, please correct me if I'm wrong in the chat about that. I know you guys got the number 1 quarterback, number 1 receiver. I can't remember what that third one was. But with the hype around it, like, I think Texas fans with Quinn Ewers are expecting to be able to go in there and play toe-to-toe with Alabama. I know some delusional Texas fans think that they're going to go in there and beat Alabama. And heaven forbid that Texas actually somehow pulls out a miracle and beats Alabama. College football fans and Alabama football fans, OU football fans, we will never hear the end of it. They're going to be claiming a national championship all the way up until the end of the year when they're not playing in it, because they beat Alabama. And if they do beat Alabama, at one loss, Texas could get into the college football playoffs, because that's the kind of respect you get when you beat Alabama. Now, why am I so intrigued to watch this game at number 3? Well, Will Anderson Jr. versus Quinn Ewers. I'm ready to see that matchup. How many sacks is Will getting on Quinn Ewers? What's the over-under? I think it's at least 3 sacks. I think he gets at least 3. Maybe 4. Because that Texas offensive line is abysmal. And that Alabama defensive line is going to eat that Texas offensive line up. It's going to be great. I cannot wait to watch this game. It's going to be a bloodbath. I personally think Alabama wins this game probably by 24 or more points. Even though it's in Austin, I think Alabama wins it by 24 or more. There is just, I don't have to wait for a prediction on that, right? We don't have to wait for a prediction. We just know Alabama should win this game. I'm calling it by 24 or more. Second on this list, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but it is Notre Dame at Ohio State. Now, again, I did talk about, hey, it's the first game of the season. It is a toss-up, but that is why it is so intriguing to me. Because Notre Dame could go in there, win that game against Ohio State, but then maybe drop a game to BYU, Clemson, or USC, or maybe 2 games and have 2 losses. Ohio State's sitting there with 1 loss. Maybe. We'll get into that a little bit later. And maybe not have a chance at the college football playoffs. Like, this game at the beginning of the season has a real impact for Ohio State. It has the potential of knocking them out of the college football playoffs week 1. CJ Stroud is going to be a problem this year. He probably is going to win the Heisman. Now, I think Will Anderson should have the best shot at it, but we all know a defensive player is not going to win it, even though they probably should. CJ Stroud is going to have a great season. Man, Notre Dame, Ohio State, first game of the season. Can you ask for a better game, though? Like, these are the out-of-conference games that we ask for, that we live for. This is like OU going to Ohio State. Like, these are the kind of games that get us hyped, that get us excited. Again, I'm going to wait on a prediction for this one until next week. But coming in at number 1 should be the most anticipated game on everybody's list. The rivalry between Jimbo and Nick Saban. We heard all the offseason talk. We saw the game. Texas A&M gets the go-ahead winning field goal against Alabama at Kyle Field. Texas A&M has the best recruiting class in 2022, even though Alabama had a better average recruiting recruit ranking in the 2022 season. Texas A&M just happened to get 4 more guys. Otherwise, Alabama probably would have smoked them. I'm excited to see what we're going to get out of this game. I don't even know what to expect. I mean, I know Alabama's going to win it, but I don't know what to expect on the score. Like, there's a part of me that wants Alabama to go out there and win that game 55-0. And you guys know me. I'm an OU fan, and I can't stand Alabama sometimes because they are the supremacy of college football right now. And I want OU to be there. But, man, this game is just exciting. Because Jimbo and Texas A&M have put a target on their back. Not only in the on the recruiting trail, but in this game. Nick Saban, Will Anderson, Bryce Young, they're coming out in a vengeance for Texas A&M. And it's going to be awful for them. It's going to be a bloodbath for Texas A&M. They are going to get smoked in this game. And it's just as simple as that. All right, let's go ahead and let's get into it. A lot of you guys saw it earlier in the week, but I put out my playoff predictions. And some of you guys had some questions around it. I saw the comments on Instagram, and we're going to dive into this a little bit. And please, hop down in the comments below and give me your argument. Tell me why I'm wrong. Number 1, I'm going to have Alabama. I think that's just a given. Number 4, I'm going to have Clemson. So I'm going to have them playing in the Peach Bowl. I don't think that one's like a hot take. I think this is a very realistic matchup for the college football playoffs. And I think a lot of you guys would agree with me for this matchup. And I actually have Alabama winning this game. But I have Clemson returning back to the college football playoffs, and I have them playing Alabama. It's as simple as that. This next one is the one that's going to cause controversy, and I'm okay with it. But I'm here to back it up. Okay? The Fiesta Bowl. I have at number 2, Oklahoma. At number 3, I have Michigan. So, let's break this down. Let's talk about Michigan first, and then I'll get into Oklahoma. So Michigan, after can we call it a rough offseason? Because you had Jim Harbaugh looking at an NFL job, maybe was slacking a little bit on the recruiting trail because of that. You lost Josh Gaddis. But I like what Michigan's returning. 7 starters on offense, 3 on defense. Now, you lost 2 pieces of production on the offensive line, but you brought in a transfer from Virginia in Victor, I can't say his last name, but I think it's Oluwatimi. So I think your offensive line is going to be okay. Not necessarily super worried there. You are returning your quarterback production in J.J. McCarthy and Cade McNamara, which McCarthy did play a couple games last year for the Michigan Wolverines. Now, this is where I think things are going to get interesting for Michigan. Because okay, so this is where I think things are going to get interesting for Michigan. Because you have a quarterback battle between Cade and JJ. And I would expect Cade probably to be the starter, at least for the first 3 games of the season. The reason being is Jim and that squad are going to have a lot of confidence behind him because he takes care of the ball and he doesn't turn it over. However, JJ probably has the most upside. By later in the season, I think there's a really good chance you could see JJ as the starter because he does have a higher ceiling. Now, although you lost Josh Gaddis, I like what Michigan is returning on offense, especially with Blake Corum at running back, who had a lot of your production at running back last season outside of So although you lost Josh Gaddis, I like what Michigan is returning on offense, especially with Blake Corum at running back. Yes, you lost Haskins, who provided a lot of production on that offense last year in the running game, especially in that Ohio State game where you won 42-27. But Corum primarily put up a lot of the production last year. Against Western Michigan, 111. Washington, 171. Northern Illinois, 125. Rutgers, 68. Northwestern, 119. Iowa, they put up 74. Now, again, Haskins probably, especially against Georgia, he played a little bit more. I know you guys are saying, well, they got smoked by Georgia in the Orange Bowl. Okay, but tell me another offense that actually succeeded against Georgia outside of Alabama in that one game. Like, you can't, right? So, I don't know. Like, I know a lot of you guys are going to think this is a really hot take, that Michigan is going to win the Big Ten again and beat Ohio State. But realistically, if Michigan can come into that Ohio State game and shut down Ohio State's offense, they have a real chance here because their schedule is extremely favorable this season. Extremely favorable. Their first 3 games, Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn at home. Then you got Maryland at home. So 4-0 right there. You got to go at Ohio. They should be able to win that game, 5-0. At Indiana, 6-0. This is where their schedule kind of gets a little tough in the next 2 games, but you have the games at home, so you got to give Michigan the home field advantage here. Penn State at home, Michigan State at home. I'm going to give them both of those games because they're at home. Then you have to play at Rutgers. You should be able to win that game. You should be able to smoke them in that game. Then you have Nebraska at home. Again, another I think it's going to be a pretty tough game for them. But because it's at home, you should be able to win it, at least by 14. And then Illinois, that should be a dub. They should go into that Ohio State game 11-0, even though it's in the shoe. If they can go in there, they can shut down that Ohio State offense. They have a real shot at this. And you tell me anybody else on the other side that's going to beat Michigan at that point. Even at one loss, if they're the Big Ten champion, they're getting in. Now, let's talk a little bit about Oklahoma. Because I know some of you guys outside of the OU fans are probably going to be like, okay, Preston, you're being an OU homer here. Not really. And let me explain why. Last year, without a doubt, a lot of people would have said OU could have won the national championship, especially with that talent. We have seen the statistics behind Dylan Gabriel at UCF with Jeff Lebby in that offense. 2019, completed 236 of his passes for 3,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. 2020, 248 completions. Mind you, this was a shortened season. 3,500 yards, 32 touchdowns. Now, in 2021, when he got hurt, only 70 completions, 814 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You can't tell me that returning in Jeff Lebby's offense and Jeff Lebby's scheme, where Dylan Gabriel is going to have much better talent, like exponentially better talent. Like, he's going to have a much better backfield. And then he's going to have wide receivers in Bunkley Shelton, who was a transfer in from Arizona State, Jalil Farouk, Jaden Gibson, Marvin Mims, Drake Stoops, Theo Weiss. Mind you, Drake Stoops is extremely good in the slot. That's almost a guarantee every time. Marvin Mims can go up there and just grab that ball. Theo Weiss has speed. These are highly recruited, highly rated guys out of high school. You can't tell me that by putting that collection of talent around Dylan Gabriel, that you're not going to have much better production. And I know he is in the running as a Heisman candidate, and some people are like, yeah, not going to happen. No, I totally see it. And that's not me trying to be a homer on Dillon Gabriel and this OU offense. That is me looking at it purely from a statistical standpoint of what he did at UCF in the Jeff Levy offense, with what kind of talent UCF had, and then what kind of talent OU is going to have this year. Mind you, Lincoln Riley, as great of a coach as he was, and great of an offensive mind he was, might have not been the best CEO in terms of being able to hire people to put around him to be able to coach that defense, right? To be able to put out a competent team. Because if he would have been able to put out a competent defense in 2018, in 2019, and 2020, in one of those 3 years, OU could have won the national championship. If not, 2 of the 3 to 3 of the 3 years. OU, in those 3 years, statistically, offensively, was some of the greatest offenses we've ever seen in terms of from a production standpoint and how efficient they were. So you can't tell me that this year they're not going to be better, that they're not going to be better than what they were last year. Because last year, this team could have lost 4 or 5 games. And I don't see OU losing 4 or 5 games this year. It may be at the most 2. At the most 2. But their ceiling could be an undefeated season. Their toughest game on that schedule is Baylor, who is returning those starters that gave you a hard time last year. But that game's at home, where these OU fans are going to be rocking for what happened last year in that game to OU, especially with how those fans acted last year. So I think OU has a real shot at coming out this year and being extremely efficient in this offense. We know that we're going to get a better production. We know we're going to get a better play from the defense on the field. It's not unlikely to say that the ceiling for OU this year is the college football playoff berth, maybe even a college football playoff win, depending on who your matchup is. And I'm thinking that matchup might be Michigan. Somebody tell me I'm wrong. Somebody tell me I'm crazy. And tell me why I'm crazy. I understand. I understand what Baylor's returning. But I look at up and down the board of what OU's returning. I look at Dillon Gabriel and the pieces you're putting around him. I look at a running back room that probably has more depth than it's had in a long time. I look at guys like David Agwebu, who was playing linebacker last year at 60, 70 pounds, now down to 230, 240. Able to move a lot better. Like, I see an offensive line this year that is going to be massively improving. I see a defensive line that's going to be hungry and getting out there, especially in that Texas game. I see guys that have been brought in through the transfer portal that are going to be able to bring in experience and help Brent Venables lead some of these young guys to go out there and be great. You see guys that are coming in and are hungry and are excited and are willing to run through a brick wall for Brent Venables. You see Brent Venables talking about guys like Justin Broyles and Billy Bowman and Jaden Davis at a high level. That's exciting. And I wasn't necessarily as high on OU earlier, but as I've been able to see what's been going on at these practices, what's been going on at these scrimmages, I get a little bit more excited about this team each day. There are concerns about the depth in the linebacker room because of TD Roof going down. But I think you still have a pretty good team there because you got Clayton Smith, Danny Stutzman, Agwebu. You got the new guys in Kip Lewis, Kanak, Kobe McKenzie. And then you got a guy like TD Roof, who is familiar, and I think he's going to be able to come in, provide some experience, help the coaching staff out, be able to provide some experience for these players. And although there's questions at depth, you have a shot. OU's got a shot. And especially with how favorable their schedule is this year. You're playing in the Big 12. Your toughest games are Baylor, Oklahoma State at home. Baylor being your toughest. outside of Baylor, I don't think there's really any questions on whether or not OU should be able to go in and beat those teams. I can go in there every single game and point out where OU should be able to exploit a problem for that team and be able to win it. And that's just facts. So in the national championship, I have OU versus Alabama, but I have Alabama winning the national championship. Alabama is the best team in the country right now. And I think they're the most hungry team because Nick Saban last year said it was a rebuilding year, and they went to the national championship and lost. Now, I don't think Georgia's going. I know some of you guys are going to be asking, well, what about Georgia? I think Georgia's probably losing 2 games this year. I think there's going to be a national championship hangover there. And they lost a lot last year. So I don't think it's wrong of me to think that Georgia's not going to get there this year. Additionally, Michigan and Ohio State, you could flip that, right? There's going to be one of those 2 teams getting in. I like to, however, think that Michigan can do it again because I like what Michigan has. Now, I love what Ohio State has, but I think there's a little bit of uncertainty there about their defense. I know they got Jim Knowles, but I still have questions. And I just like Michigan to do it. I would love to see that matchup of Michigan and Oklahoma. Now, what about the Pac-12, right? Utah, USC, maybe Oregon. I don't think Oregon's going to be that great this year, but definitely it's going to be between Utah and USC. Although I think the Pac-12 will be better this year, I just think they're going to beat up on each other too much. I think 2-loss Pac-12 champion is not going to be able to get in. Notre Dame, they could have 2 losses. So if they go in with 1 loss or undefeated, I think you got a shot. But if you have 4 undefeated teams going in there and Notre Dame has to go up against one of those with 1 loss, I just don't think they're getting in. It's going to be hard. There are a lot of really great teams this year. College football is going to be amazing this year in terms of the talent across the board in the games that are just the matchups that we have. This is my Final Four, and I'm going to stick with it. Now, later in the season, when we get to the point of where rankings are going to be, I will rank accordingly to how the season is going. However, this is my prediction. And if I'm wrong and when I'm wrong, I will admit it. Now, throughout the season, these rankings could change, but it's going to be rankings based off what's going on through the season, not necessarily who I'm predicting. These are my predictions now. So let's go ahead and put that out there. These are my predictions. And when I'm wrong, if I'm wrong, I will admit it. I will take whatever heat you guys want to put on me. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. I am excited for week 0. Tune in on Wednesday so that we can talk about and recap the week 0 games and talk about the upcoming week 1 slate of games as well. I am excited to have you guys here. If you have not already, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. It really helps me out a lot. Go ahead, head over to Twitter, head over to Instagram, give me a follow. And then if you like to listen to the podcast, I am on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. So go ahead and give me a follow there. Give me a 5-star rating. It really helps me out a lot. I really appreciate it. Throughout the season, we're going to be running some contests for follows, ratings, and everything. So go ahead, hit that button. You never know, it might enter you in a contest. Or, if we have something later in the season and you're already subscribed, you're already following me, that might be great for you as well. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next week.